fighting for the faithful. The Trump administration's domestic policy director tells us the president's plans to defend religious freedom if he is reelected. Studying the tests, lawmakers debate the next steps in the fight against the coronavirus. A unique approach. How one American university is treating its study abroad program during the COVID-19 pandemic. And a gift from Pope Francis. What the Holy Father is giving to people he meets in private audiences. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, September 17th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council tells EWTN News Nightly about President Trump's commitment to saving unborn lives and protecting religious freedom. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, here at the White House, Brooke Rollins heads up the Domestic Policy Council for President Donald Trump. And earlier today, she spoke with us about the president's plans for the next 4 years, should he win, and its direct impact on the faithful.
This president has been laser focused on religious freedom.
Brooke Rollins has the ear of the president, advising him on issues of paramount importance for Catholics. She says the president is committed to keeping his promises and will never stop the fight.
For our pro-life policies, for the sanctity of life, for religious freedom, for protecting religious freedom, I can promise you this, that he will spend every waking moment in this White House doing just that over the next 4 years.
The coronavirus pandemic shut down Catholic churches around the world, but outside, protests in the streets. Rollins calls it extraordinarily hypocritical.
But I think America is waking up, and I think even those people who are in the states that are still closed down, that can't go to their churches, that aren't allowed to go back to work, they're realizing that this is too much.
And the images of Catholic statues toppled and vandalized, and churches set on fire. What more can federal prosecutors do to punish those committing the crimes?
The Department of Justice under General Barr has been very focused on this. The president almost immediately took action on those who were defacing and tearing down some of our most historical monuments.
And if President Trump does not win re-election, Rollins says the president's legacy will continue.
He just wants to come in and he wants America to be better, and he wants to return power to the people. So everything we've done, and it's been obviously very conservative, deregulation, cutting taxes, preserving religious liberty, 200 judges in the federal courts, 2 Supreme Court justices.
Today is also Constitution Day, and here at the White House, the executive branch, of course, Rollins told me our founding fathers' thoughts and ideas, and even their genius, all based on the freedom to worship. Tracy?
White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Thank you so much, Owen. Well, the FBI charges 5 Chinese citizens with hacks that targeted over 100 companies in the U.S. and abroad.
Several of these defendants also defrauded video game companies through manipulation of in-game resources to increase their illicitly obtained income. These for-profit criminal activities took place with the tacit approval of the government of the People's Republic of China.
The hackers also allegedly sold video game currency for profit and are accused of hacking social media and prominent universities. The Chinese defendants remain in China, but 2 Malaysians who helped them were arrested in Malaysia and are awaiting extradition to the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is reviving her push for the House's HEROES Act. She wants $75 billion for COVID-19 testing and contact tracing. That's in the $3 trillion bill, which passed the House back in May. It is the latest offer from Democrats for more COVID aid as Republicans respond. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
There is a plan. There has been a plan. It has been rejected, but we will further assert it.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the Democrats' effort at more COVID-19 relief, the HEROES Act, passed by the House more than 4 months ago, is not dead yet. And the Senate's Democratic leader agrees.
Democrats in the House, joined by our Senate Democrats, came up with the answer, the $75 billion in testing and tracing funding that's in the HEROES Act.
Congressman Frank Pallone of New Jersey laid out differences between what Democrats want and what Republicans have offered.
In the HEROES Act, we have $75 billion for contact tracing and testing. In the skinny bill the other day, McConnell put forth only 16. That's a discrepancy of over $50 billion.
The Senate Republican leader says COVID-19 relief must be targeted, a standard the $3 trillion HEROES Act does not meet. He says the House Speaker is blocking true COVID relief compromise.
Speaker Pelosi is blocking all of it because apparently to the San Francisco far left, anything short of multiple trillions of dollars would make her, quote, a cheap date.
Yesterday, the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services testified to a Senate committee. More tests are being rolled out now. A new rapid test comes with an app that offers instantaneous reporting of results.
The administration announced a $760 million contract with Abbott for the delivery of 150 million rapid Binax Now point-of-care tests. This test is easy to perform, does not require an instrument, delivers test results in 15 minutes or less, and costs $5.
Health and Human Services officials also say that the first 2 million of those rapid COVID-19 tests will be deployed this week and beginning of next week and will likely go to the most vulnerable population, nursing homes. Tracy?
Eric, what are House Republicans saying about the Speaker's return to the HEROES Act?
Yeah, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy did hold a press conference earlier today. He would not actually give us a dollar amount on what it would take to be able to get this bill passed, but he did question the stall tactics of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. He called her unfit to be House Speaker, and he also said that she's putting the lives of Americans in jeopardy. I do want to let you know about another story. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin is currently in quarantine. Senator Johnson was supposed to be traveling with President Trump, but he learned on Monday that a friend of his actually did test positive for COVID that he had been visiting. So on Wednesday, he had a test. It came up negative because he was supposed to be traveling with POTUS tonight, but he has decided to stay in quarantine until September 29th. Tracy?
Okay, Eric, thank you so much. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill. The Jewish high holidays are getting underway later this month, but for the first time since 1958, the Great Synagogue in Jerusalem is closing due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Every year when we have the choir in our cantors, people fly in from all over the world and coming from all over the country just to officiate here at the Great Synagogue. This synagogue indeed is very unique.
The Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, starts tomorrow at sundown. Next weekend is the traditional Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, when Jews fast and spend the day praying at synagogues. In Jordan today, the government is closing schools, churches, mosques, and restaurants for the next 2 weeks after a spike in cases of COVID-19. Anyone who attends funerals, weddings, or parties could be jailed for 14 days. There is also an overnight curfew, and some neighborhoods with high rates of infections will be isolated. Archbishop Georg Gainswein is expected to leave the hospital today. The personal secretary of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI was hospitalized for severe kidney problems about a week ago. Close sources say he is better and improving steadily. The 64-year-old thanks everyone for their prayers. An American university has reopened its Rome Study Abroad program despite the global pandemic. The University of Dallas is hosting nearly 80 students at their Rome campus. The students arrived earlier this week and are in quarantine until September 26. Currently, Italy, that is, allows entry into the country for study and work purposes. Joining us now is Peter Hatley, director of University of Dallas's Rome program. Peter, welcome to the program. First off, what steps are being made to make sure these students stay healthy and safe?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to the program. Well, first of all, I'd say that we set a protocol already before they came. The students who came to the University of Dallas Rome program spent 14 days in self-isolation. That means with their families prior to coming. They also had a diagnostic test before coming. Made it over the ocean, arrived on Sunday, September 13th, and what we did is we've created a model of, let's say, governing and containing the virus, which is called collective quarantine. And what that means is that on our campus, our 13-acre campus, what we have is an area for people who are non-quarantined. That would be our professors and our priests. The students are in quarantine, 78 in all, and they are at a distance in a barrier between them and the non-quarantined people. And then thirdly, we have a kind of isolation center or makeshift hospital in case anybody gets positive. Students are wearing masks, they're practicing social distancing, they're washing their hands, and they're being really, really good about it. The last thing we did, and that was just today, is we tested them upon arrival with another diagnostic test, and I can just say with great happiness that 78 students tested negative today.
Well, that's great to hear. A lot went into that for sure. And I'm sure making the decision, though, to reopen the program really wasn't easy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was like having 4 campaigns. I wouldn't call them war, but 4 different campaigns going on at the same time. At some level, we were following what the CDC was saying, what the Italian government was saying, what the World Health Organization was saying, and that was, day by day, what are the numbers looking like? That's going on all the way from March all the way up to the day of their departure. At the university level, I was talking to our board of trustees, our president, our leadership, and especially was really crucial talking to parents and students just to understand their comfort level with this. Sent out many, many letters, had a couple of town meetings with them, and what we demonstrated is there was a great desire, a will to come to Rome to this program.
Peter, how are the students feeling about these new changes? And also, do you know what they're looking forward to the most after quarantine's over?
I think they are looking forward to going to Rome. And in fact, the very, very first day back from when we're out of quarantine, we will go to Mass, leave our campus at 6 a.m., and we'll have Mass in St. Peter's as soon as we can do that. And then we'll walk across the city of Rome together to the Capitoline Hill, the Roman Forum. On the first day of our program, usually we do that just off of the plane, but we're doing that 14 days later to show them these 2 extraordinary hubs of Rome, the sacred Rome surrounding St. Peter's and the Vatican, and then the ancient pagan Roman achievements and their most important places in Rome, the Roman Forum and the Capitoline Hill.
Well, what an amazing experience for the students and all those involved. And thank you for sharing all this with us. Peter Halley, director of University of Dallas's Rome program. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, a closer look at recent vandalism to church properties around the United States. New York police are searching for a man caught on camera vandalizing a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The statue outside of the Shrine Church of Our Lady of Solace in Brooklyn, New York, suffered damage to the face, hands, and base after it was thrown onto the sidewalk. Now parishioners are raising money for its repairs. Matt Hadro, senior correspondent at Catholic News Agency, joins me now to talk more about this and other attacks on churches across the U.S. Matt, welcome back. Always good to see you. So this was a pretty brazen attack right in broad daylight as cases of vandalism continue across the country. Matt, what else do we know about this incident?
So I spoke with the pastor earlier this afternoon. He said that the suspect has not been arrested yet, that he was apparently involved in other acts of vandalism. It was a very sad moment for the community. There was a Mexican population at the shrine that has a deep devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe. There were people that were in tears when they got the news. There were people that were praying outside the shrine late into the night of the attack. They're hoping to have the statue replaced by December 12th, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It will cost around $6,000 to replace.
Matt, what are some of the other cases that you've been following?
Well, there have been a series of attacks on churches all around the country, ranging in scale from attacks on statues, spray painting, beheading of statues, to churches being set on fire. There was a historic mission church in California that was founded by St. Junipero Serra that was devastated by fire earlier this summer. The attacks have continued into September, as we saw in Brooklyn. There was another church in Utah that was burglarized twice this week. So, you know, these are a series of attacks, and they're continuing.
Yeah, really disturbing. I know there's also been developments in El Paso where a suspect is now in custody for the destruction of a statue of Jesus at St. Patrick Cathedral this week. Bishop Seitz of the Diocese of El Paso urged people to pray for that vandal, and that's always such a powerful message. Can we talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, he said that he drew inspiration from praying in front of the statue to the Sacred Heart before he would offer Mass there. The statue itself is almost a century old, and the diocese has said that it's valued at, the damage is irreplaceable. The church was actually targeted in 2019. The FBI was investigating arson at 3 churches in El Paso, and the cathedral was one of those churches. So this isn't the first time.
Matt, I'm curious, where do things stand right now on legal punishments for suspects found guilty of these crimes?
So, there are laws on the books. For example, in 2019, there was a former NYU professor who was charged with hate crime, criminal mischief for attacking a church and damaging a statue in New York City. Sometimes the FBI gets involved. There have been FBI investigations, as I had just relayed, in such as in El Paso and elsewhere. There have also been members of Congress that have been asking the Justice Department to get more involved here. They've sent a letter to Attorney General Barr from Congressman Chuck Fleischmann of Tennessee, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. They wrote the Attorney General asking him to identify and prosecute these attacks when necessary.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for your time and coming on today. We really appreciate it. Matt Hadro, senior correspondent at Catholic News Agency. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.
The Catholic Church is responding to the needs of wildfire victims from California to Washington state. Homes and property have been destroyed. Correspondent Mark Irons reports on some of the relief efforts that are underway. Mark?
Tracy, there is an immediate need to help people who are suddenly homeless. Some Catholic churches in Oregon are now taking in families after homes were destroyed in fires. An official with the Archdiocese of Portland described the situation at one parish in southern Oregon.
As of last night, we have over 120 families without homes. So they are living in the school gym. They are living in areas of the buildings where we have room. We're trying to provide shelter. And we're also providing food.
Carmen Gaston with the Archdiocese of Portland says Catholic churches have been able to open doors because, amazingly, not one church has burned down since fires began last week throughout the Archdiocese. Gaston says the tragedy has brought deep sadness, but also incredible faith.
If anything, it is bringing everyone closer together. Whether it be the folks that have lost their homes, whether it be the friends that took them in. Many of our parishioners took in not just fellow parishioners, but also people who just didn't have their homes.
Gaston says financial needs are great and assistance can be directed to the Portland Archdiocese Wildfire Fund. But Tracy, the needs are great all up and down the west coast of the U.S. Catholic Charities USA also has a wildfire relief fund accessible online, and the Knights of Columbus in Oregon is also taking donations for relief, and the Catholic Church in California is also helping as well. Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We're praying for everyone out there. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. Thanks again, Mark. Well, Hurricane Sally has weakened to a tropical depression and is forecast to bring flash flooding to the Carolinas. We are getting a look at the devastation along the U.S. Gulf Coast, where the storm made landfall yesterday, leaving catastrophic flooding. Roads and bridges are closed, homes are underwater, and more than 500,000 people are now without power. Up next, why a photo from Romania has special meaning for Pope Francis. A newly released survey finds while U.S. teens attend religious services about as often as their parents, teens are less likely to say religion is an important part of their lives. The Pew Research Center study finds 24% of teens ages 13 to 17 say religion is very important in their lives compared to 43% of parents. Join me now on Skype to talk more about the study's findings is Elizabeth Stupak, senior researcher at the Pew Research Center. Elizabeth, welcome back. Good to have you on the show again. The study, which was just released, but I know was conducted before the pandemic forced the shutdown of churches, points out that attending religious services tends to be a family activity. What were the teens' reasonings for participating, and what do you think is behind the difference between parents and the teens on the importance of religion in their lives?
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to talk about this study. You're right, as you pointed out, there are very similar rates of attendance at worship services between teens and their parents. About 4 in 10 of each of those groups say that they attend monthly or more often. But when we ask teens, what is the main reason that you attend religious services? Is it mainly because you want to, or is it mainly because your parents want you to? We find that they're a little more divided on that. About 35% of teens say that they attend mainly because they want to, and 38% say that they attend mainly because their parents want them to. And we do find kind of this broader pattern about what teens do and when they look like their parents and when they don't. And what we find is, like you said, on these more family practices like attendance, and in some cases somewhat affiliation, is that they tend to look more like their parents. While on these more individual measures, things like saying religion is very important in their lives, saying that they pray daily, or even saying that they believe in God with absolute certainty, those are the more individual measures where they look a little bit different than their parents.
I know that 24% of the teens that you heard from identify as Catholic. What were some of your study's findings for them?
So we do find that there are about a quarter of teens who identify as Catholic, and among Hispanic teens, that share is a little bit higher, quite a bit higher, actually. It's about 47% or so of Hispanic teens who identify as Catholic. And so we do find that Hispanic teens across the board look largely similar to U.S. teens overall. About a quarter say that religion is very important in their lives and that they pray on a daily basis.
Also, 63% of the teens you surveyed, that is, identified as Christian, but nearly 1/3, 32% of the teens you surveyed, identified as religious nuns. What do you think is influencing that? And do you think that maybe social media has some sort of impact?
I think that's a very interesting theory. One of the things to keep in mind about this survey, at least for us, is that it's the first time that we've interviewed teens in this way. So this is kind of our starting point for the share of teens who do identify as religious nuns, N-O-N-E-S. This is kind of our starting point. We don't have a full trend on them, so it will be interesting to see where they go from here. What we do know about the growth of the religiously unaffiliated among young adults is that it has been consistently happening over the past decade or so.
We don't have much time left, but I'm wondering, based on your findings, what do you think we can do to decrease the percentage of the nuns?
You know what? I'm not entirely sure. I think a lot of this depends on just how teens grow up. When we ask teens about we ask them how many beliefs they think they hold in common with their parents, and about half said that they have all the same beliefs in common. But among those who said they had different beliefs, a lot of them give reasons saying that they're just unsure about things. They're less religious because they just have these doubts and these questions. So I think probably a good starting point to understanding teens is understanding why they have these different beliefs from their parents.
Well, Elizabeth, a very interesting survey. Thank you for doing it. We appreciate it. We appreciate you coming on. Elizabeth Stupak, senior researcher at the Pew Research Center. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
President Trump versus presidential nominee Joe Biden and the future of the Supreme Court. Tonight on EWTN's Pro-Life Weekly, host Catherine Hadro has expert legal analysis on what's at stake. Also tonight,
a lot of people are greatly hurt, not only by the act of abortion, but they're hurt by the way we talk to each other about the act of abortion and about its legality. We call names. We don't have much empathy. And so my goal was to set forth on this journey to really figure out how we got here.
Super Bowl champ turned filmmaker Benjamin Watson talks about his new pro-life documentary about the abortion debate and where you can see it. That's tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly at 10 p.m. Eastern. And finally tonight, Pope Francis has been sharing a fond memory of his trip last year to Romania by handing out a prayer card with a very special image. Pope Francis was moved by the smile of a grandmother holding her grandson during his visit to the city of Iași. A photo was snapped of the woman and child by a Vatican photographer, and now, at the Pope's request, has been made into a prayer card. Pope Francis has been handing them out to the people he meets. Beautiful. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.